Hey guys, I am your host, Marvin Chavez, and here with me today is Connor Walsh.
Marvin, what the hell are you doing?
You see, I am hosting this week's Connor Walsh Wednesday.
Why did you tie me up? Is any of that necessary?
Yeah, sorta. But, I kind of had to make all the prevention stuff, just dealing precautionary measures.
You are a sadist.
That's questionable, but no, I've been editing all of the Walsh Wednesday, and I said, why not today?
This is absurd. I am out of here.
That was a clip that Marvin Chavez and I did to promote my first album, Spend Some Time, back in 2017. I remember introducing the idea to him saying, "Hey Marvin, you want to help me with a promo video? You get to tie me up." He jumped on the offer. To be honest, he seemed a little too excited to tie me up and do it. Marvin was that friend you could just suggest anything to, and more than likely, he would just go along with it. In July of this year, we unfortunately lost that spirit, as Marvin passed away from complications due to COVID-19. For the funeral, Marvin's mother asked me if I could speak at the ceremony. I was honored to be asked, and today I would like to share the speech that I wrote for all of you now. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Connor Walsh. I've known Marvin now for about 7 years, as we both attended FDR High School and the College of St. Rose together, even living together for one of those years. I think anyone who knew Marvin knows he would say something like, "This is crazy." He used to love it when I impersonated him. I would make it my job to make him laugh so hard. I would do it all the time just to see that goofy smile and see if I could get him to fall over in his seat. He just had this one-of-a-kind presence to him that I loved being involved with. It had been a year since I'd seen Marvin in person, but we would always keep in touch. Most often, I would send out my daily inspirational Snapchat streak, while he would reply with some sarcastic comment about work. But every once in a while, I would get that message from him in all caps that said, "Dad!" And I would respond back, "Brown son!" And for the record, he bestowed that Brown son nickname upon himself. My nickname to many people over the years has been Dad. He just took it to the next level. We were never really that PC together whatsoever, but that blunt honesty and lack of fear around each other made our relationship so great. I had a bunch of other nicknames for Marvin. Marvino was a classic one. Brown son, as I mentioned. My Latin lover. Saying those last two nicknames one after another makes me realize how bad that all sounds. We didn't care though. We had so much fun together. I remember meeting Marvin for the first time at FDR. As many of our friends, including Marvin, would say, in typical Connor Walsh fashion, I walked up to him in the cafeteria and said, "You're a face I don't know. Let's change that." And from that moment, he would sit with us at lunch. And you know how sometimes that transition to a new group in school can be awkward? Well, whether it was or not for Marvin, he just fell into our laps and was indoctrinated so easily with us all that it's as if he had been there the whole time. He was never afraid to get a conversation going, and even on some of the most difficult days, he had the biggest smile. His smile was contagious, and it was so unique and perfectly his own. It wasn't long until we started doing stage work together. I was very avid within the theater and sound crew, while he did the lighting crew. We ended up being involved in a number of productions together at FDR, and we sure had a lot of fun in the meantime. Playing golf with tape balls, playing can jam in the auditorium, watching movies in the lighting booth, and blasting meme songs constantly. Don't worry, we still did our work. Anyone who worked with him could tell you that he was one of the most passionate workers in the group. He cared so much for the lighting crew, his co-workers, and stage department. He gave 110%. He loved working under Mr. Edgerton, along with Mrs. Martin and Mr. Defoe for the plays. Everyone who worked with Marvin loved him. Some of my best moments with Marvin in those days were outside of school. Very often, it was Harv, Marv, and I. Harvey Burns, Marvin, and myself. Many a night, especially in the summers, we would go out to the movies, the mall, bowling, shooting pool, you name it. To be honest, he was not that great at either bowling or pool, but he would often be the first person to suggest we go out and do it. I can still picture him now laughing at himself for whiffing right by the cue ball or making some joke following a gutter ball. He was hilarious and made light out of any situation. He loved it all, and I think he just loved bringing us all together somehow. He was the glue in many situations. And then we got to college, and I know that's where our brotherhood was cemented. We were a part of the Brew 2 Center West crew with a number of our friends we met freshman year. It was a beautiful family that we formed together, but to me, it was nothing without Marvin. You see, that transition from high school to college was a difficult one for me for many reasons, but Marvin was always this constant source of positivity. He sat with me constantly as I would rant and rave about how scared I was about the future and how confused I was with everything changing. We spent many a night at my dorm playing video games, specifically Wii Sports, and he would be one of the first people I would go to about a song idea. My most predominant memory of that was when I just wrote the rap for my song Tomorrow Man. I was so bad at performing it when I first wrote it, and he was honest with me. He let me know I was bad. But he never sugarcoated anything. His honesty was one of the best things about him. And then came sophomore year, where we lived together in alumni, and our whole friend group formed the alumni family, or Big Familia, depending on who you're talking to. I loved living with him. It was so beautiful to come home to him. I'd often find him in the living room when I'd come in and we'd just start talking about our days right away. Sometimes we would just yell profanities throughout the apartment just for the heck of it, pretending to be mad about something, and then by the end, be laughing on the floor. But with the light, there was some darkness. Sophomore year was not an easy time for me, to be honest. I was in a very dark place. I can honestly say without Marvin being there, I don't know how I would have turned out. He was there for me through thick and thin. He's one of those friends who would never leave you hanging. Whether it was simply going to the dining hall, wanting Burger King or DP dough at midnight, wanting to go to a party with me so I didn't go alone, though he himself knew nobody there. He was one of the biggest rays of sunshine in my life. He taught me a lot about editing and helped me with Walsh Wednesday for a while. One time he even hosted it as a gag, as you just heard. He is the only person to ever, quote-unquote, host my web series besides me, and I'm proud that he has that honor. Unfortunately, when he had to leave St. Rose, all of us in the suite, along with many friends, were heartbroken. I remember I even made a little poster for him that we hung up in the suite with numerous pictures of him that read, "In loving memory, Marvin Chavez." He absolutely loved it. He joked with us saying that we had to kiss it every time we left the suite from then on. Some of my best memories in the past 7 years include Marvin. I can still picture us rocking out to the Dance Dance Revolution mat I discovered together while living in alumni, thinking everyone was going to want to play it with us. No one ever played it at all after that night, but we had a great time. I remember celebrating Earth, Wind, and Fire Day, September 21st, with him as we blasted September by Earth, Wind, and Fire throughout the suite. I remember him introducing me to DP and sharing many nights with him and Nick devouring stuff while we were cramming for the next day. I remember playing pool at K1 Speed or my uncle's pool hall with Harvey along with some other friends and then going bowling immediately after. I remember how we would eat Burger King on Central Avenue out of a house and home at least once a month. I remember being total goofballs in lunch together and having the wackiest of conversations. I remember when those conversations would turn serious, and when I didn't know how to feel, Marvin made it feel all right. Marvin was truly one of those once-in-a-lifetime kind of friendships. As I said, he never left a friend hanging. You tell him something was going on, and he would simply be like, "Bet," and throw on a hat and go wherever the adventure took us. His loyalty and care for every relationship he had is to be admired and commended. When Marvin had faith in you, you felt like $1 billion. He had a larger-than-life presence. At least to me, if Marvin was around, the situation was substantially better. He made me feel very comfortable, very safe, and very sure that everything was good. And as I've been finding myself sinking into sadness, I also think to myself that Marvin would tell me to sit down and watch some crazy video he just found. Most likely something about penguins. He loved penguins. And that I'm being way too hard on myself. He would also suggest we order calzones. Marvin taught me a lot about how to love myself and appreciate life in the moment you're in. When I was all wound up, he knew how to slow it down and bring anyone back to earth. I know my nickname was Dad, but I know for sure he took care of me and all the relationships in his life so well and so beautifully. Marvin, you will forever be my brother. From being that table in the cafeteria, to sound and stage, to Brew 2 Center West crew, to the alumni family, to my own family, I will always love you. And tonight, I'm going to DP Dough just for you. Thank you all and God bless. Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Walsh Wednesday, the Reflective Series. Today, we're going to be sitting down with Marvin and I's mutual friends, Harvey Burns and Nick Rivera, as we remember his life. As I mentioned already, and as you'll hear later in the interviews, Marvin was a huge support to all of his friends. I've learned a lot from his compassion and camaraderie over the years, and because of him, I believe I've become a more dedicated friend and ally to others. And that is something that I try to display in another project of mine. St. Rose Rocks is music for the Golden Knights by the Golden Knights. We strive to have conversations that bolster our guests and give up-and-coming College of St. Rose artists the platform to showcase their talents. St. Rose Rocks was initially inspired by the concert series episodes I did of Walsh Wednesday, sophomore and junior year of college. Many of you may not know this, but Marvin edited a number of those videos and taught me how I could do more of it myself. So, because of Marvin's generosity and assistance, he inadvertently helped lay down the foundation for St. Rose Rocks. You can check out all the episodes on the St. Rose Rocks YouTube channel or the College of St. Rose Student Association Facebook page. New episodes are being released on Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. To me, Marvin was a huge reason that St. Rose rocked. My first guest on this episode of Walsh Wednesday is my good friend Harvey Burns. Harvey and I have been really close with Marvin for several years now. However, I actually never knew how they originally met, so I asked him.
It's kind of funny because Marvin actually knew about me before I ever met Marvin. We were all in the same friend group and everything like that, but he never actually put a name to a face. We actually had DCC government class together with Mrs. Mullen, and she put us in alphabetical order, and just where our last names ended, mine being Burns, his being Chavez, there was no one in between us, so me and him actually sat together. So it was very funny when he was like, "How's it going, Harv?" And I'm like, "I don't know you, but how's it going?" So it was one of those where it was like, I don't know you, I know of you. I know your name. I never actually had a conversation with you before, but once we started talking in class, got yelled at for talking in class, but we still did. It was very interesting because I got to know him on a personal level more than just I know of you. So it was nice to actually get to know him on a personal level and make a lifelong friend.
Besides getting yelled at in class together, I asked what it was like seeing Marvin as a student in high school.
He was incredibly intelligent, and it's sad because just as intelligent as he was 3 times as lazy. And we all know this, and everyone has that little bit of laziness where it's like, yeah, I should do this 500-word essay, but I'll wait till tomorrow to do it. He was one of those, I'll wait till the period right before to do it. So he was also a huge procrastinator, because how many times in our lunch period did you see him, I need to do this, and just put his head down at lunch and just right away?
Oh, about at least half the time. At least half the time.
As Harvey had stated, their friendship blossomed because of their time in the classroom, but it expanded and bloomed beyond belief outside of the classroom as well. It even got to the point where Harvey actually helped Marvin get a job at where he worked.
Yeah, that's actually funny. I remember after, I think it was his second semester,
Yep.
I remember during that winter break, me, you, and him actually went out. And I think we were bowling at the time. You were bowling or something. And me and him started talking a lot more from then. Like, we already talked in high school. At that point, I would not have called him my brother or anything like that. I would have said, yeah, he's a good friend. I could go up to him and talk to him at any time, but it's one of those, I'm not going to go extremely out of my way to talk to him, you know? It was funny because then we started hanging out more, and not even with just me, you, and him. Me and him would hang out on our own. So me and him would actually just go out on our own, just randomly, like, hey, you want to go get like something to eat real quick? It's like, yeah, sure, I'll pick you up after work. And I remember him sitting down with me at one of those lunch things, and he told me, I think I might drop out of college. And I was like, I mean, that's a big step. Are you sure you want to do that? And the way he was explaining it to me, he's like, my GPA isn't the greatest, and I don't want to keep putting all this money into something that I know that I'm not getting the most out of. So in that respect, he was incredibly mature and incredibly responsible and intelligent on that aspect of, you understand it's not working, let's try and do something else. It was almost inspiring in a sense, because you looked at him, you were like, you've tried this and you understand it didn't work. I give you props for moving past it in a sense. And when he told me that, I was like, you're a good friend of mine, and I know I've seen your work ethic before because I've worked with him in a sense. because we had an odd job of doing an inventory count out in Connecticut. And I asked him, like, hey, it's only going to be one day, but I mean, you can get $75, $100 out of it. So I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So we actually went out there, and I saw his work ethic then, and I was like, okay, cool. He knows what he's doing. He does work hard when he needs to. So I was like, look, I can try talking to my boss and my supervisor and everything like that. I can see if there's an opening for you. And it was funny because the very next day I went into work, they said, yo, we need another guy. We need another guy. And it was just like beacon of light timing. I was like, let me tell you about my buddy Marvin, like sales pitch and all. When we did work together, it was interesting because I would wind up picking him up for work every day. That's when I got to know his mother the best. His mother is such a sweet lady. I remember the weekend after I think me, you, and him went out on that first weekend after he started working. His mother looked at me. He's like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm like, for what? And she's like, you got Marvin a job. I was like, oh, yeah, that's no problem. I can do that 8 days a week. I guess all he was doing at that point was like cleaning up around the house every once in a while and like sitting down watching TV. And I don't want to say in a sense she felt bad for him, but I could see why she was very concerned, because when you just drop out of college like that, she probably thought he was like halfway depressed or something, because in her mind, he probably thought he failed. In no way, shape, or form did he. He just learned that that's not for him.
That was one of the impressive things about that whole experience. Well, first of all, he knew that he was going to leave, but he didn't tell any of us in the suite because he was kind of like afraid of how emotional we'd get. So it wasn't until like we really got back that he was like, hey guys, I'm not going to be around and I already moved out. And we're like, what? Obviously I saw what he was doing with that. Like he didn't want to hurt us, but during that whole period, I would check up on him and all that. He was never too worried about necessarily the sense is like, okay, yeah, no, just college wasn't my thing. And maybe I'll get back to it. But right now I just need to work. And yeah, it never once was a failure kind of thing, a shame kind of thing. He was always positive about it. It was like, okay, just on to the next thing, whatever that is. Let's see what that might be. And that was like one of the best things about Marvin. He was like, oh, well, what's next?
And it was funny because when I was starting talking about doing school and everything, he was like, oh, hey, why don't I try looking around and seeing what I want? And at that point, he looked at me. He was like, I'm thinking about becoming a mechanic. And me and Marv are both car guys. We both understand cars. We both enjoy cars. It was funny because constantly he would look at me. He goes, I need you to start building your Outback. And I'm like, why? He's like, I want to help. So it was very one of those things like, oh, he wants to help on the wagon.
But that's also just totally the kind of guy that he was too. Like as much as he
you asked him for the shirt off your back, he'd give it to you.
Oh,
in a heartbeat. He's one of those people that you could say, we're walking through that burning building, and he'd go, okay, we'll figure out why on the other side, but let's do it. And he would just follow you in, not even thinking about it. He'd go, if we're doing it right. Let's do it. One of the many things I absolutely loved about him, that he would never ask, why are we doing it? Why? He would never focus on the why. He would just do it. Now why? Once it's done, get it done, talk later. That's how it was. And it was very kind of motivating.
Marvin really was one of those friends that was there for you in your time of need. And he really proved that when both Harvey and I were going through a tough time at the same exact time.
It's funny that you say you help people through stuff, because both me and you went through breakups while being his best friend. So you went through it, I think, right before I did. So it was funny because I saw him. He was constantly like, are you okay, Connor? Have you talked to Connor lately? Have you? It's one of those like, yes, I have. Have you? It's like, it's almost like the whole chain of networks. Like everybody talk to him, make sure he's okay. And then right after that, me and my ex-girlfriend winded up splitting ways rather abruptly. And he was constantly, let's go out and do something. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. It was never, hey, you want to stay home and talk about it? No, he was very much, let's get you out so that way you're not thinking about it. Let's let you move past this in a healthy way of not repress, but let's get your mind off of it. I already know you're thinking about it before you go to sleep, but let's not think about it for a few hours of the day. He was very caring in the respect of if you were having a bad day, he could pick up on it very well. But at the same time, he was smart enough to know do I talk to him about it, or do I say, hey, let's try and get your mind off of it? Because there were days where it was, I don't want to get my mind off it. I want to get this whole process, this thought process done. But there were also days where it was, I need this off my mind. Marvin, can you help? Bet, let's do it. What are we doing? We'll find something to do. Let's do it.
Besides being the super supportive friend, he was also the friend that knew exactly when to call you out when you needed it.
Yeah, he wasn't fake in that sense. And constantly, but like if I did something stupid, he would look at me and he'd go, what would Dad say about this? I'm like, oh man, don't bring Dad into this. It was just great if you were a fly on the wall watching it, because you could tell it's like what he just said was heavy, but at the same time you knew it's lighthearted enough that it's not affecting anything seriously. It's one of those like, wow, you had to bring him into this.
Instead of the what would Jesus do bracelets, what would Dad do bracelets or something like that.
It was fun working with him, though. My favorite memory of it, he wanted to be a mechanic. He told me he wanted to be a mechanic. We were on propane forklifts there. He overheated a forklift. He's like, what's that hissing sound? He boiled over the coolant in the radiator, and he just didn't know what the hissing sound was. So it spilt coolant all over the concrete ground. And he's like, oh, that's what it was. And it was just like, oh no. In that moment, I was like, are you sure you want to be a mechanic?
I could just see him just looking at the ground and being like, oh, so that's what it was. Totally unfazed. I could so see him.
Marvin really was that easygoing, laid-back, relaxed guy that you couldn't wait to hang out with. And that really translated into what I mentioned earlier about pool and bowling and things along those lines.
The thing with Marvin with pool, he would have like 4 shots of excellence. They would just be like professional level shots. And they were incredibly difficult shots too. But then he would have the one shot where it's already lined up and with. It's like the one right before the 8 ball. And he just sets everybody else up. And you just see his head just go from up to down.
What you gonna do? Bowling too, his specific way of rolling the ball, how he would just kind of waddle up to it and just yeet it right into the gutter most of the time.
I'm pretty sure that he was getting paid by the bowling alley to dust those gutters that night.
That's a good way of putting it.
He did that bowling alley a service.
Very much so. And same with every bowling alley in Albany, too.
I'm glad that we were getting the laughs out and all, because that's exactly what Marvin would want us to do. But I did want to sit down and talk to him about how that was like when he heard the news about Marvin's passing.
I actually didn't hear exactly how he passed away at first. Marvin's mother called my mother. My mom walked upstairs, knocked on my door. She's like, I need you to take a deep breath and relax real quick. And I'm like, what's going on? Is something up? And she looked at me and she was like, Marvin passed away. In that moment, I did not know. It's almost like time froze, because I was like, none of that is real. And even up onto his funeral, and even to this day, I didn't think any of it was real. It still hasn't really clicked. There are still days where I'll grab my phone and I'll go on Snapchat to go message him like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? I'll type that message out, and then it clicks real quick. He's not going to answer. It makes your stomach drop in that sense, where it's like, damn, 30 seconds after my mom told me, I ended up calling you and telling you, because you were his best friend when you guys were in Albany. I felt you needed to know. You had a right to know before you saw it on Facebook or something like that. Even to this day, like I said, I still don't think it's real. I honestly thought my family was messing with me at first. I thought it was a cruel joke, and it wasn't. Hearing that it was from COVID and seeing people who are saying, oh, this disease is fake and things along those kind of lines, besides pissing me off, it really makes me, I almost pity them in a sense, because before Marvin ever told me he had COVID, because he was in a coma for like 4 or 5 days before he passed away, like weeks before he passed away, I viewed COVID as what I heard. And from what everyone was telling me, oh, it's just the flu mixed with bronchitis. For that period, I thought, yeah, it's pretty serious, but it's not. At that point, I was like, it has a high living rate. No one knows, whatever. It's fine. I'll be fine. Everyone's fine. And then once Marvin came back to Snapchat after he woke up from that coma, I was talking to him. And in that sense, it really clicked in my head. This is a lot more serious than I expected. When he ended up passing away, besides my mind was already changed on COVID after he woke up from the coma and told me everything, it still makes me pity the people who don't believe in it, because there's an old saying, it doesn't happen until it happens to me. Not true until it happens to me. In a sense, I really want to just sit those people down and go, this is real. Nobody knows for sure what this is. I'm not going to tell you the livable rate of it or anything like that, because there still isn't enough research into this to know for sure. Take this seriously. This is not some joke. This is serious. This is a pandemic. There are countries in the world that shut down because of it. Please don't be so closed-minded. Please open your mind to this. Look into this. Please. That's all I can really say to people. And I'm not going to yell at them or anything like that, because you're more likely to win people over by being nice.
Before we wrap things up, I asked Harvey, what was the biggest lesson or value that he learned from Marvin?
It's funny. Marvin always taught me, probably the best thing he ever taught me was not to hold a grudge, not to hold hatred. Because I remember me and him sitting down and talking about a certain someone. For a while, I wanted to just hate them, and for a while I did. But he looked at me one day and he was like, are you taking more effort just to hate this person, or would it be more effort to not forgive, but move past? And when he looked at me and said that, I guess it opened a valve in my head where it was, it's easier to just move on. Holding on hatred for somebody is a lot of work mentally. It's not worth it. I'm not saying that you can't dislike somebody. I'm not saying that you should forgive everybody for whatever they've done, but move past it. If it does not affect your everyday life, don't think so much on it. It's going to sit there and be a stone in the back of your head. And if you constantly think about it, you constantly think, I hate this person, I hate this person, I hate this person. Dive deeper into why. Is it because they did something, or is it because you don't like the outcome of what they did? And that's probably the biggest thing that he taught me, was just to stop holding on to hatred.
Honestly, when Harvey was telling me all that, I got shivers. I got goosebumps, because that's exactly what Marvin was all about. He was all about that living in the moment. He was all about just love, compassion, and he never sweat the small stuff. When we return, we're going to talk to Nick Rivera, who was a good friend of both Marvin and I's in college and one of our suite mates by the time we got to sophomore year. Nick is going to talk to us about his perspective meeting Marvin in college and how Marvin influenced his life thereon. As I mentioned before, Marvin was someone I turned to in regard to my music. Marvin was no musician by any means, but it was his impartial opinion and blunt honesty that made him a great testing board. Pretty much every song that I wrote in college at one point went by him. He attended many of those early shows and dealt with all of my growing pains. So it's an honor to be able to share most of those songs with you now. My album, Away From Home, releases Friday, November 27th on all main distribution and streaming platforms. In the album, I've dived into topics of love and loss, desperation and inspiration, and the journey towards maturity. Marvin was a big influence on all those aspects for me, and I know he's still listening. You can pre-order the album now from the links in the description, and it would mean a lot if you give Away From Home a listen this Friday and share it with your loved ones this holiday season. You heard our next guest last week when we had a much more lighthearted interview about his content creation. Well, this week, Nick Rivera returns to talk about his time with Marvin Chavez in college. So the first thing I asked him was, how did he meet Marvin?
It was freshman year, first semester. It was back in, damn, this is gonna be a long time ago. 2016. Wow. But no, we were all freshmen, right? And I ended up being in one of his classes. It was our like intro to computer science class or whatever it was. It was a programming class. I wasn't the biggest fan of, programming and learning the language at the time, so I asked him because I knew he knew a lot about it in the class. And I was like, yo, what's up? Can you help me with all this? He's like, yeah, for sure. And then we were able to like meet up and just have a fun time while doing coursework. I don't know how it got brought up into the equation, but you came up and then we're like, oh my God, we connected on both of that. And then that's when I realized like you two went to school together. And I was like, oh my Lanta, this is a small world, right? And it just really went from there. He made a really boring class so much more enjoyable for me.
Things extended outside of the classroom pretty quickly, and it really helped with how close we all lived near each other.
For those who didn't know, we all lived in Brubacher Hall, right? Which is a freshman dorm off of the St. Rose campus, right? About a block away from the school. We didn't really go to campus that much, like me and Marvin, because, we just wanted to get our classes done, get food, and dip. So what we did was, he used to work down in the brew lounge. And every time he would work, I would always go down there and chill with him. We would play pool, ping pong. That was good. A lot of nights were spent in the brew lounge, just chilling, playing pool. There was times where I wanted him to get, up and active and all that. So we went to Brubacher Field and, play some catch with the baseballs. We got to hit some baseballs around. That was a fun time, man. He wanted to do anything and everything. That's like one of my favorite things about Marvin is that he was so adventurous and just down for whatever the hell we wanted to do. That's the best thing about Marvin, man. He was just so down for whatever. He was just so go with the flow.
By the time that sophomore year rolled around, we all decided to live together in one suite. It was Marvin, Nick, myself, along with our friends Victor and Mike. Unfortunately, halfway through that year, Marvin had to withdraw from college. But I told Nick it was very hard not thinking of the year and Marvin not being there. He was that big of a staple on that year. Even the short time that he was with us, I still had a hard time envisioning that he wasn't there for all of it.
Yeah, we all lived together that first semester, right? That was honestly the best time I've had, like, living with someone in college. What was the room situation? It was me and Marvin in one room. Yeah, so originally in the beginning of the year, I was supposed to live with Mike Traggs, right? And then I was like, you know what? I can love this dude. Let me move into B, right? And then we got everything situated with B, and we just wanted to make the room like a really chill spot, right? And that's what it ended up being. Like, for such a chaotic year, it was very nice to come like into a room and just see Marvin there. That was the best thing. Oh man, that whole year though, like that first half of the semester living with Marvin was a ride. We've been through, like Khan said, we've been through a lot of get-togethers, a lot of family nights, a lot of Sunday dinners were made in that apartment. And those are definitely the times where you see that big connection that everyone had with Marvin. Like he was such a lovable guy, right? Everyone was able to connect with him so well and just be able to chill when he's around.
I remember when Marvin ended up leaving, it was really hard on Nick, and it was a big transition for all of us in the suite to get used to Marvin not being around. Regardless of the distance, Nick and Marv really worked hard to stay in touch with each other after Marvin left, and it was clear to see that they too had formed a brotherhood. So it was definitely hard on Nick when I unfortunately had to deliver the news that Marvin had passed.
So I'm at home back in Newburgh, right? I'm editing videos for my YouTube channel, right? And then Khan calls me, like, I want to say it was like 8 something or 9 something at night, right? It was late. And I was like, yo, you good? What happened? And then you were like, oh, I don't know how you're going to take this news, but Marvin ended up passing away. And I was like, I was speechless because at that point, we knew that, he was in and out of the hospital because of, health implications and all that and the thing that's going on in the world. all that fun stuff. We knew he was out at that point. We knew he was getting back to being healthy, right? Just hearing that news, like it broke me because Marvin was the guy to be able to make the best out of anything, whatever like his health was at that point. And we figured, he's so strong-willed. He has the support of his family, and I thought he was gonna be good, but like you told me that news, and I was speechless, man. I was like, nope. I had to put the recording down, and I was like, I need to step back for a bit because I was shocked.
Regardless of all the feelings that Nick was having at the time, it all didn't sink in until we actually got to the funeral.
That day specifically, it didn't hit me until we got to the cemetery. I was trying to be like stone faced and trying not let that emotion of, sadness come out when that day is supposed to be a day of remembrance and celebration of his life and everything that went on in his life. But when we got to the cemetery and we ended up, like holding the casket and carrying it. We were the pallbearers during the ceremony. We were just, carrying the casket down, aligning it and watching them drop the casket and hearing his mom just keep screaming "Mi niño" was like, it broke me, dude. It broke me. Usually I don't let a lot of emotions of like sadness and grief take over and like visibly show it, but there I couldn't, dude. It broke me down, man.
The fact that it hit so close to home, I wanted to know how this shaped Nick's mindset going forward with COVID-19 in general.
Oh my God. I have very strong opinions on this COVID pandemic, man. I'll tell you what. For those who don't know, I also work in retail. I see a lot of people and a lot of different faces every day that I go in, right? I always have to be like on my toes and make sure I protect myself and the people around me at all times. Being able to wear masks for multiple amount of hours, having gloves on me at all times, making sure my hands are clean and my body's clean and no one's coming to touch up on me and all that. Keeping that appropriate distance is like just following guidelines, right? Following guidelines and not being really stubborn about it, right? Can not completely eliminate it, but mitigate it as much as possible to where everyone should feel like kind of safe, right? But there's some people out there that, still doesn't believe this exists and all that fun stuff. And I just tell you guys, like, what the hell are you guys thinking, dude? This is a real thing, right? You haven't seen people back in the day with the Spanish flu saying like, oh my God, this is not real. This is a hoax by the government. Like, nah, man, this is real, dude. This is real life. The way I picture it all, right, is especially when this whole thing started, right? We were inside in New York for months, right? Being able to, still find the good things in life, even though life is like not as we picture it right now, right? So that's when, I started doing my YouTube channel, and that's when I started to release my music because I found a lot of solace in making chill music that people can appreciate, right? Any chance I get, I would definitely be outside and just embrace the sun or the rain or whatever the heck came that day. Just being able to not take it for granted. You want to like stay in this like whole situation with a humble mind. This could inevitably like get to me, right? How could I make this like best for me? Having a very supportive family there too is key. It's very critical because your mental health, like if you stay in for too long, you start to like go freaking nuts, right? And just having that supportive inner circle around you during this time too is also critical. So yeah, just seeking solace in whatever like your interests are. Like surprisingly, I got interested in credit scores like during this pandemic, and now my credit score is like my credit score is really good. Like because just research and this that weird all these weird things that people do get into like at the start of this pandemic because we're gonna be like, oh my God, we're gonna stay inside all the time. I'm gonna get some workout equipment. I'm gonna do all this fun stuff. Like, don't take it for granted. Don't take it for granted. So take advantage of what you got now. You only got one life to live, dude. You really do. And just making the most of it, whatever you got, is always the best, man. It's always critical.
And making the most out of your time is something that was very key to Marvin. It wasn't something that he necessarily consciously thought about all the time. That was just his personality, making the most of the time that he could get with his friends and the things that he was passionate about. As much as living in this pandemic feels like a science fiction film, book, whatever, it's unfortunately reality. And the reality of the situation is this time period has taken away a lot from a lot of us. It's taken away jobs, it's taken away opportunities, and it's taken away loved ones. We've lost a lot, but we still have a lot of things to help move us forward and try to make the most out of whatever 2021 and years on after that will be. I wish Marvin could be here with us to see what we'll accomplish. I wish Marvin was around so I could see what he would have done. But I know in his memory and in his honor that all the people that he touched are going to be better people because of him. God, I know I am. I think about him every day. I really do. I think about him constantly, thinking about how I miss him and how much I really want to be able to talk to him again. And how much I wish I could just sit with him on a couch again and just watch a movie, something. What I wouldn't give for a moment like that. So, take advantage of the loved ones that you have while you have them. So, as you guys celebrate Thanksgiving tomorrow and you celebrate the holidays coming afterwards, please consider all the things that you do have in your life, all the things that you have to cherish, all the wonderful memories, all the love, all of that you still have and you can still hold on to. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Walsh Wednesday, the Reflective Series. I want to thank Marvin's mother and family for giving their blessing for having this episode happen. I reached out to see if any of them would like to speak, but understandably, it's still difficult for a lot of them at this time, and I totally get that. Grieving knows no timeline, and whatever you need to do to keep moving forward, that's what you need to do. And I completely and 100% understand, and I'm constantly sending Marvin's family lots of love, support, and whatever you guys need. Praying for you all at all times. Thank you again for tuning in to this special episode of Walsh Wednesday. Marvin means a lot to me, as he did to a lot of people, so it means a lot that you tuned in to listen to this and celebrate his memory with us. As always, I'm Connor Walsh, and I'm glad we get to spend some time.